The control room of the starship Volcara was usually quiet, except for the soft hum of machines.
But
Tonight, that silence was broken by a sharp, metallic crash. Sparks burst from the main console as a huge clawed hand smashed through it with terrifying force. The sound of tearing metal echoed through the chamber and made everyone freeze and fear Commander Raxer. The alien officer in charge of the mission stood at the center of the wreckage, his chest rising and falling like a wild beast. His glowing blue eyes burned with fury as he looked at the broken pieces scattered at his feet. He was taller than any human, his powerful shoulders casting a shadow over the consoles. His sharp claws still dripping with the oil from the damaged control panel. The crew didn't dare move. Every single one of them knew how dangerous Raxer could be when angered. The alien's muscular frame and brutal training made him one of the deadliest officers in the galaxy. The air in the room felt heavy, as if everyone was holding their breath. Jack, the human officer assigned as Raxer's second-in-command, stood at his post, gripping the edge of the desk. His mind raced. He had only said one thing, a single sentence, and Raxar had exploded into violence. Jack's voice came out shaky. Raxar, "What's going on?" But he didn't get an answer. The alien commander turned slowly to face him. The glow in his eyes looked more dangerous than any weapon. Rax's voice was deep and filled with rage. "Do not ever speak that name again. Human." His words rolled like thunder, and Jack felt his stomach tighten. "I didn't mean to upset you," Jack said carefully. He didn't even know what he had done wrong. All he had done was mention the name of another female alien officer during their discussion about old mission files. Her name had been on a report. He had simply read it out loud, and suddenly Raxer had slammed his claw through the control panel. The other alien crew members backed away slowly. They all knew this was dangerous. One wrong move could push Raxer over the edge completely. Jack could see fear in their glowing eyes, but he couldn't just stay silent. "Raxer." "That was the main navigation system," Jack said, his voice shaking but louder now. "Without it, we are blind in deep space." "What are you doing?" Raxer stepped closer, his heavy footsteps making the floor vibrate. He towered over Jack now, his breath hot and sharp against the human's face. "That name is forbidden," he growled. "You will forget you ever spoke it." His claws hovered near Jack's chest, so close that one sudden movement could pierce straight through his heart. Jack forced himself not to step back, even though his instincts screamed at him to move. "I don't understand," he said. "Why does a name matter so much? Why destroy the ship over it?" Raxer's lips curled back, his sharp fangs flashing. "Because it brings death," he said in a low voice. "Because she is not to be spoken of, not by anyone." Then with one swift movement, he slammed his tail against the already broken console, tearing it apart completely. More sparks showered. The floor, the ship's alarms began to wail loudly. Red lights flashing across the room. Jack's heart sank. He knew the damage was severe. Without that control panel, the Volcara had no navigation. They were now drifting in uncharted space with limited supplies. The crew rushed to the backup consoles, but half the systems were already failing. Raxer didn't seem to care. His entire focus was on Jack, his voice now cold and sharp like ice. "If you value your life, human, do not speak to me of her again." Jack wanted to shout, to demand answers, but the look in Raxer's eyes stopped him. It wasn't just anger he saw there, it was something else, something darker, a mix of pain and fury so deep that it had shattered the control panel and nearly doomed everyone on board. "Commander, we need to stabilize the ship," one of the alien technicians said. But Raxer ignored him completely. He turned away from Jack, his huge shoulders tense. Then he stormed out of the control room without another word. The heavy door sliding shut behind him with a loud metallic thud, the crew was left in stunned silence, the red emergency lights flashing across their worried faces. "What just happened?" one of them whispered. Jack didn't answer. His mind was still spinning. How could the mention of a single name cause such a reaction? Who was this mysterious female that Raxer refused to even hear about? Jack stared at the broken control panel, feeling the cold weight of fear settle in his chest. They were in serious trouble now. The ship was drifting farther into unknown territory every second, and the only one who could repair the damage had just walked out in a storm of rage. Jack knew one thing for certain. This was no ordinary outburst. Raxor was hiding something. Something big, and whatever it was dangerous. Jack clenched his fists. He couldn't let this go. He needed answers. But for now, he had to keep the crew alive. He turned to the technicians. "Get me a systems report," he ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Find out what still works and how long we can last." Inside, though, Jack's thoughts were not calm at all. He kept replaying the moment again and again. The way Raxor had looked at him when he said the name. The way the alien's claws had hovered so close to his chest. Jack had been in dangerous missions before. He had faced enemies that could crush him in seconds, but this felt different. It felt personal, and somewhere deep inside, Jack knew this was only the beginning. The alarms continued to wail through the starship Valkara, red lights flashing across every corner of the control room. Jack stood at the center, his chest tightening as he watched the damage reports scrolling across the cracked backup display. Every system was failing one by one. Life support had only 72 hours left. They were blind without navigation, and they were drifting farther into uncharted space. "Where is Commander Raxor?" One of the alien technicians whispered nervously, his pale, scaled hands moving frantically over the controls. "If we do not repair the main console, we are doomed." Jack clenched his jaw. He wanted to say the same thing, but he knew it wouldn't help. "Keep working," he ordered, his voice sharper than usual. "Stabilize what you can. I'll find him." Jack left the crew struggling and moved down the silent corridors of the Valkara. The red emergency lights flickered like dying stars, casting long shadows on the metallic walls. He could hear the hum of the engines in the distance, but they were running on minimal power. The ship felt like a wounded beast drifting helplessly through the dark. Jack finally reached the heavy door to Raxor's private quarters. The panel showed the door was locked from the inside. He took a deep breath and pressed the control pad anyway. The door refused to open. "Raxor, it's Jack," he said firmly. "We're in trouble. We need you." There was silence on the other side. No response. Jack stepped closer. "Listen to me. The navigation is gone. We have 72 hours before the supplies run out. Do you want everyone on this ship to die?" The door opened suddenly with a loud hiss and Raxor filled the doorway like a shadow of death, his glowing blue eyes locked onto Jack's. His voice was low, but it carried a dangerous weight. "Do not test me, human," he growled, his claws flexing as though ready to strike. Jack held his ground even though every instinct told him to back away. "I'm not testing you, Raxor," he said steadily. "I'm trying to save this crew. Smashing that control panel didn't just hurt the ship. It could kill us all. Is that what you want?" Raxor stepped forward slowly, his massive frame towering over Jack. His presence felt like a storm building in the distance. "I warned you not to speak of her," he said, his voice vibrating with fury, "and you ignored me." Jack's brow furrowed. "I didn't ignore you," he said carefully. "I didn't even know what I was saying wrong. I mentioned a name from the mission files and you went berserk. You owe me an explanation." Raxor's claws hovered dangerously close to Jack's chest, so close Jack could feel the faint scrape of metal against his uniform. "Do you really want to know?" Raxor asked, his voice a deep growl. "Because if I tell you, you won't sleep again." Jack swallowed hard, but he didn't look away. "Yes," he said. "Because whatever this is, it's not just your problem anymore. It's putting us all in danger." Raxor's glowing eyes narrowed as if measuring the human in front of him. Then he grabbed Jack by the collar with one powerful hand and dragged him into the quarters. The door slammed shut. Behind them with a heavy thud, Jack stumbled forward but quickly regained his balance. The quarters were darker than he expected. The walls lined with data screens and strange alien symbols glowing faintly. But what caught Jack's attention was the far corner of the room. A faint blue light shimmered there, illuminating something that looked like a sealed chamber. Jack couldn't see clearly from this distance, but it sent a chill crawling down his spine. Raxor released Jack and turned his back, his claws curling into fists. "That name you spoke belongs to someone I lost," he said in a voice so quiet Jack almost didn't hear him. "Someone who should never be spoken of again." Jack stepped closer. "Lost how?" he asked carefully, She was in the mission files, Raxer. She was one of your own. If she's gone, we deserve to know why. Raxer spun around suddenly, his anger flaring once more. No, he thundered. You do not deserve anything. He moved closer until Jack could feel the heat of his breath. You will forget that. Name human, or I will tear this ship apart piece by piece, starting with you. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. He had been threatened before, but the sheer intensity in Raxer's voice sent a shiver down his spine. Still, he refused to back down. We're already drifting to our deaths, Jack said quietly. If you want to kill me, fine. But that won't change the fact that this crew needs you. Raxer's breathing slowed, his glowing eyes softening just slightly. For a moment, Jack saw something behind the rage, a flicker of pain. Then Raxer stepped back, his claws lowering. You think you're brave? He said, his voice bitter. But you have no idea what you're asking. No idea what that name means. Before Jack could respond, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms screamed louder than before, and the intercom crackled with a panicked voice from the control room. Commander Raxer, Officer Jack, we have incoming. An unidentified vessel is approaching fast. Raxer's head snapped toward the door, his eyes blazing with a fire. Jack had never seen before. They found us, he said in a low growl, and if they board this ship, every living soul here will die. Jack felt a cold wave of dread sweep through him. Whoever they were, Raxer clearly feared them, and that alone was enough to make Jack's blood run cold, and deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning of a nightmare. The ship Valkara trembled violently as the alarms screamed through every corridor, the red lights pulsing like a heartbeat on the edge of panic. Jack gripped the edge of the wall as the deck shifted beneath his boots. The distant echo of crew. Voices crackled over the intercom, but none of them had answers. The only clear message was that an unidentified vessel was closing in. Fast. Raxer was already moving toward the door with powerful strides. His claws flexed and his glowing eyes scanning the danger readouts projected in the corridor. They found us, he growled, more to himself than to Jack, and they will not leave survivors. Jack hurried after him. Who are they? He asked, his voice sharp and demanding. What's going on, Raxer? You're not telling me something. You keep talking like you know exactly who is out there. Raxer stopped so suddenly that Jack nearly crashed into him. The towering alien turned, his expression colder than space itself. Because I do know, he said in a low voice. They are the ones who took her. Jack's mind spun as he tried to connect the pieces. The female from the mission files, he said. The one whose name you lost control over when I said. It is that who you're talking about. The muscles along Raxer's jaw tensed as if even hearing the reference hurt him. Do not say her name again, he warned, his voice like a blade cutting through the air. Why? Jack shot back, his frustration finally boiling over. Why is her name so dangerous? Why would it make you destroy our ship? Why would it make someone chase us through deep space? Raxer leaned down until his glowing eyes were inches from Jack's. The alien's presence radiated pure intensity. Because she is not dead, he said quietly. And because they turned her into something worse than death. Before Jack could respond, the ship shuddered again, harder this time. The lights flickered and one of the overhead pipes burst, spraying sparks across the corridor. Raxer grabbed Jack by the shoulder and pushed him toward the control room. Move, he ordered, if you want answers. You will get them after we survive. The control room was a storm of panic when they arrived. Alien technicians shouted over each other, their hands flying across the backup consoles as the unidentified vessel filled the external scanners, its jagged silhouette growing larger every second. It wasn't a ship Jack recognized. Its design was brutal and angular, like it had been built for one purpose, only to hunt their locking weapons. One of the crew called out, his scaled hands trembling. Commander, they're about to fire. Jack's gut tightened. We can't outmaneuver them. Not without full navigation, he said. What's the plan? Raxer's voice was steady. Colder than the void we fight. Stall them long enough to repair the engines, and if that fails, we make sure they don't take us alive. The room went silent at his last words. Every crew member understood the weight behind them. Jack stared at him in disbelief. That's not a plan, he said. That's suicide. You don't even know who they are. Oh, I know, Raxer said, turning to face the scanners, his shoulders rigid. They are the Sindar Collective. The same ones who captured her 3 years ago. The same ones who experimented on her until she was no longer herself. I killed half their fleet to get her back, and I failed. Jack's breath caught. He had read fragments about the Sindar in old classified files. They were whispered about as ghosts of the galaxy. Cruel genetic engineers who stole beings from across worlds and twisted them into weapons. But no one had ever confirmed their existence. She was one of them, Jack said quietly. Shh. One of their experiments, Raxer's hands clenched into fists, his claws digging into his own palms. She was my bonded one, he said. His voice filled with a deep ache, and I could not save her. He turned to Jack suddenly, his eyes blazing. Do you understand now why I destroyed that? Panel, why I can't hear her name. It is a wound that never heals. And now they are here. The scanners beeped. A countdown flashing as the enemy ship's weapons charged. Jack looked at the crew, who were now paralyzed by fear. He had no time to process Raxer's words. Weapons fire in 5 seconds. One of the technicians stammered. Raxer moved to the weapons console, his claws flying across the interface. Brace for impact, he ordered. The enemy's first volley of plasma blasts struck the Valkyra like a hammer. The entire ship lurched sideways. Panels blew out. The crew was thrown against walls and consoles. Jack grabbed onto the nearest railing, his knuckles white as he tried to stay upright. Alarms screamed louder than ever. We can't take another hit, one of the crew yelled. The shields are collapsing. Raxer snarled and activated the ship's counterattack. A volley of missiles streaked out toward the enemy vessel, slamming into its hull and sending shards of molten metal spinning into space, but it wasn't enough. The Sindar ship shrugged off the damage and continued to close the distance. Jack turned to Raxer. We can't win a head-on fight. There has to be another way. You know these people better than anyone. How do we stop them? Raxer's glowing eyes flicked toward the sealed chamber Jack had glimpsed in his quarters earlier, then back to the enemy vessel. There may be one way, he said, his voice heavy with reluctance. But if I use it, none of us may survive. Jack felt his chest tighten as a chill ran through him. What are you talking about? He asked. Raxer stepped forward, his voice low enough that only Jack could hear. She is still here, human, he said, in stasis. The one you dared to name, and if I wake her, she will not be the same as I remember. She will be what they made her, and she will kill everyone. In her path, Jack stared at him in shock, unable to form a response. The enemy ship loomed closer on the scanners, its weapons glowing bright. Raxer placed his hand on the control panel and met Jack's gaze. Choose, he said, his voice like a final warning. Do we die here, or do I unleash the one thing even they fear? And in that moment, Jack realized there was no good choice at all. The ship Valkyra was coming apart at the seams, metal groaning under the relentless assault from the Sindar vessel. Alarms screamed through the corridors, and the lights flickered like dying stars. Dunt. Jack stumbled forward as another blast rattled. The deck, sparks rained from the ceiling panels. His ears rang with the sound of destruction shields at 20%. One of the alien technicians shouted, their scaled hands flying over the backup consoles. Another hit, and the hull will breach. Raxer stood at the center of the chaos, his glowing eyes fixed on the scanner that showed the enemy ship closing in. Prepare to seal the lower decks, he ordered. His voice calm despite the carnage. Divert all remaining power to the engines and shields. Jack stepped toward him. Engines aren't enough, he said, his voice urgent. We can't outrun them, and you know it. If you have a plan, now's the time. Raxer turned slowly, his expression unreadable. I told you, he said, his voice carrying a weight that silenced the room. There is only one option left, but it may cost every soul on this ship. Jack's stomach tightened. Remembered the sealed chamber he had seen in Raxer's quarters. The faint blue light, the figure inside. You're talking about her, he said quietly. The female in stasis. The crew looked around in confusion, not understanding, but Raxer's jaw tightened. She is not just a female, he said, his voice low and dangerous. She was my bonded one. She was the heart. of my life, and the Sindar turned her into a weapon beyond control. If I wake her, she will destroy everything in her path. Jack stepped closer, lowering his voice. And if you don't wake her, we all die here anyway. The Sindar ship fired. Again, the blast tearing through the starboard shields and carving deep scars into the Valkyra's hull. The ship shook violently. Crew members were thrown against walls. One alien technician screamed as a panel exploded behind them, filling the air. With smoke and burning wires, Jack grabbed Raxor's arm. "We don't have time to argue, Raxor," he said, his voice raw with desperation. "You said she's the only thing they fear? Then wake her up. Give us a chance to survive, Raxor's." Claws twitched, as though torn by the decision. His glowing eyes burned with pain. "You do not understand what you are asking," he said. "If she awakens, she will not recognize friend or foe. She will kill without hesitation, including you." Jack met his gaze without flinching. "Then we make sure we're not in her way." For a long, tense moment, Raxor said nothing. Then he turned abruptly and strode toward the rear corridors. "Seal the control room." He ordered the crew, "If the Sindar board us, fight until you can fight no longer." Jack followed him down the narrow passageways, the air thick with smoke and the low hum of failing engines. They reached Raxor's quarters, the heavy door sliding open to reveal the sealed chamber Jack had glimpsed before. The blue glow shimmered softly against the metallic walls. Jack stepped closer, his eyes widening as he finally saw the figure inside clearly. She was taller than a human, but smaller than Raxor. Her features sharp and elegant even in stasis. Her silver hair floated weightlessly around her face. Her body encased in a translucent shell of crystal-like material, she looked peaceful, almost angelic, but Jack could sense the danger beneath that. "Calm. She's beautiful," Jack whispered, and then instantly regretted saying it when he felt Raxor's claws tighten near his shoulder. "Do not speak of her that way," Raxor said, his voice tight. "She was more than that. She was my bonded one. Her name was Celira." His voice broke as he said the name. "And the Sindar twisted her until she was unrecognizable. I placed her in stasis the night I failed to save her. I thought she would be safe, but if she awakens now—" Jack stepped in front of him. "Raxa, I get it," he said. "You're scared of what she's become, but we don't have another choice. She might be dangerous, but so are they." Raxor's claws hovered over the release mechanism, his chest rising and falling like a beast on the edge of a cliff. "If I do this," he said, "there is no turning back." The ship shuddered again as the Sindar ship's boarding clamps latched onto the hull with a heavy metallic thud. The distant sound of cutting torches slicing through the airlock filled the corridors. Jack felt his heart race. "They were out of time. Do it," he said. "Wake her up." Raxor slammed his claw into the release mechanism. Chamber hissed as the stasis field dissolved, the crystal shell cracking apart. The blue light fading into a cold darkness. Celira's eyes fluttered open slowly, glowing with a light Jack had never seen before. She stepped out of the chamber with a slow grace that sent a shiver through Jack's spine. Her silver hair fell around her shoulders. Her eyes scanned the room and locked onto Raxor. For one brief moment there was recognition. A flicker of something warm, and then it was gone, replaced by a deadly stillness. "Celira," Raxor whispered, his voice soft. "It's me." Her head tilted slightly,
Us.
her glowing eyes narrowing as though struggling to understand. Then she spoke, her voice a chilling echo that didn't sound entirely alive. "Raxor, you should have let me die." Before Raxor could respond, the walls shook violently as the Sindar boarding teams breached the hull. The sound of their boots echoed in the corridors. Celira's glowing eyes shifted toward the noise, her body stiffening. Jack felt the air around her change, the temperature dropping as an unnatural energy began to build around her. She turned toward the door, her voice now a whisper of cold steel. "They are here," she said. "I will kill them all." Raxor stepped forward. "Celira, wait." But she was already moving faster than Jack's eyes could follow. The door burst open in a flash of light and screams erupted from the corridor as the first Sindar soldiers fell. Jack looked at Raxor, his chest tight with fear. "You weren't lying," he said. "She's not the same." Raxor stared at the chaos unfolding beyond the door, his heart heavy with grief and dread. "No," he whispered. "She's worse, and deep inside, Jack knew the nightmare had only just begun. The corridor outside Raxor's quarters was chaos. Screams and weapons fire echoed through the ship Valkara as Sindar soldiers poured through the breached airlocks. But they were not prepared for what awaited them. Celera moved like a shadow maid. Of steel, her glowing eyes locked on the Sindar soldiers as she stepped into the hallway. The air around her shimmered with unnatural energy. The first soldier barely raised his weapon before she ripped through him with a force Jack could not comprehend. His armor cracked apart like fragile glass and his body fell lifeless to the floor. Another Sindar soldier charged at her, his weapon, firing streams of searing plasma, but the bolts seemed to bend away from Celera's body as if an invisible barrier surrounded her. She extended one elegant hand, and the soldier was hurled against the wall with such strength that the impact dented the metal. Jack stood frozen in the doorway, watching the destruction unfold. Celera was fast to follow with human eyes, each movement a blur of power and precision. The Sindar soldiers screamed in terror as she tore through them one by one. "She's unstoppable," Jack whispered, his voice barely audible over the carnage air. A step forward. His massive frame tense. "She wasn't like this before," he said, his voice heavy with pain. "They changed her. Twisted her into something I can barely recognize." Jack turned to him sharply. "Then stop her," he said. "She's killing everyone in her path. What if she turns on us next?" Raxor's glowing eyes stayed locked on Celera. "If I stop her now, the Sindar will overrun the ship and kill us all," he said. "But I can try to reach her if there's even a trace of who she was left inside." Celera stepped over the bodies of the fallen soldiers, her glowing eyes scanning the corridor for more prey. The surviving Sindar pulled back, their usual discipline breaking as fear took hold. She moved with terrifying calm, her silver hair flowing like liquid light behind her. Raxor finally called out, his deep voice echoing through the hall. "Celera." She froze mid-step, the sound of his voice cutting through the chaos. Her head turned slowly, her glowing eyes locking onto him. Raxor stepped toward her cautiously, his claws lowered to show he meant no harm. "It's me," he said softly. "It's Raxor, your bonded one. I put you in stasis to save you. Please, you know me," for a brief moment. Celera didn't move. Her eyes flickered as if something deep inside her was struggling to surface. Jack held his breath, hoping she would respond. Then her expression hardened. "Raxor," she said, her voice sharp like broken glass. "I remember you." Hope lit Raxor's eyes. "Then you know who you are." "I remember that you left me," she interrupted, her voice trembling with fury. "You left me to them." Raxor froze, the weight of her words hitting him like a blade. "No," he said quickly. "I tried to save you. I fought through their fleets. But I couldn't reach you in time. I never stopped fighting for you." Celera stepped closer, her energy flaring like fire around her. "They showed me the recordings," she said, her voice a deadly whisper. "The Sindar told me how you abandoned me, how you sealed me away like I was already dead. I begged for you to come, and you didn't." Jack's stomach tightened. He could see the torment in Raxor's eyes. "She's been lied to," Jack said quietly. "They twisted her memories." Raxor reached for Celera, his claws trembling. "Please, Celera," he said softly. "You know that's not true. I would never abandon you." But Celera stepped back, her glowing eyes narrowing. "You should not have woken me," she said. "The Sindar made me what I am, and now I will finish what they started." The ship shuddered as another blast from the Sindar vessel tore through the starboard side. The lights flickered, the sound of collapsing bulkheads echoing in the distance. The crew's terrified voices crackled over the intercom. "Commander, we're losing the ship. Hull breaches everywhere." Celera turned toward the sound of the intercom, her expression cold. "This vessel will not survive," she said, "but I will." Jack stepped forward despite the fear clawing at his chest. "Celera, if you destroy this ship, you destroy yourself too," he said. "You're not a weapon. You're a person. You're not what they made you." Her glowing eyes shifted to him, and Jack felt a chill run through his spine as she studied him. "A human," she said softly. "You think you know what I am?" Jack met her gaze without looking away. I know you were someone Raxor loved, he said. And if you were capable of love, then you can be more than what the Sindar turned you into. Something flickered in her expression, a shadow of emotion. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, love, she said bitterly. That was taken from me long ago. She turned sharply and began walking toward the forward decks. Her movements fast and precise. I will kill every Sindar left on this ship, and then I will burn their vessel to ash. She said coldly, if you stand in my way, I will end. You too, Jack grabbed Raxor's arm. We can't let her go, he said urgently. She destroys both ships, we're all dead. Raxor's jaw tightened as he watched her walk away. I have to try, he said. I have to remind her of who she was before it's too late. Jack shook his head. She's not listening to you, Raxor. We need a plan. Something to stop her before she takes the entire galaxy down with her. Raxor's glowing eyes followed Celira as she vanished into the shadows of the ship, his heart heavy with the weight of his failure. She was my bonded one, he said softly, almost to himself. And I will not lose her again. But Jack could see the doubt in his eyes. The fear that maybe, just maybe, Celira was already lost forever. The ship Volcara groaned like a dying beast as Celira disappeared deeper into the forward decks. The corridors behind her littered with cinder bodies, the smell of scorched metal and blood thick in the air. Jack and Raxor stood frozen for a heartbeat, listening to the distant sounds of her rampage echoing through the walls, the sharp cracks of weapons fire followed by sudden, chilling silence. We can't just stand here, Jack said, his voice low but urgent. She's not stopping, Raxor. She's cutting through your crew as easily as she cut through the cinder Raxors. Glowing eyes narrowed as he turned toward the forward decks, his chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. She's not my enemy, he said, but if I don't stop her now, she'll bring the entire ship down with her. Jack followed close behind as Raxor began to move, his heavy boots clanging against the deck. Then tell me we have a plan, Jack said, because right now she's the most dangerous thing on this ship, and the Sindar aren't even finished boarding yet. They reached the intersection of the central corridor where the emergency lights flashed against the twisted metal. Sindar soldiers were scattered in pieces across the floor, their advanced rifles cracked and melted as if they had been crushed by invisible hands. Jack felt his stomach churn as he stepped over the bodies. She did this in seconds, he muttered. How do you even fight something like that? Raxor stopped at the junction, his claws tightening into fists. You don't fight her, he said. You remind her of who she was. Jack stared at him, disbelief etched on his face. That's not a plan, he said sharply. That's a hope, and hope's not going to keep this ship from blowing apart before Raxor could respond. The deck vibrated violently beneath their feet as the Sindar vessel latched onto the Volcara's midsection with reinforced boarding clamps. The sound of drilling and cutting torches filled the air. The enemy was breaching a second access point. Jack grabbed the edge of a bulkhead as the ship rocked. They're tearing us apart from the inside, he said, even if she wipes them all out. The Volcara won't hold together much longer. Raxor activated the intercom, his deep voice booming through the remaining decks. All crew, retreat. To the aft compartments, seal the bulkheads, and prepare for decompression. He said, hold your ground until my command. Jack looked at him. You're pushing everyone to the far end of the ship. He said, what are you planning, Raxor? The alien commander met Jack's gaze, his glowing eyes hard as steel. If Celira cannot be reached, I'll eject the forward sections, he said. Everything from the midline forward, including her and the Sindar boarding parties. Jack felt a cold shock run through him. That'll kill her, he said. You said you wouldn't lose her again, Raxor's voice was heavy. I won't. But I also won't let her take the crew with her. They pressed forward through the darkened corridors. The hum of the ship's failing systems a constant, a reminder of how little time they had left. At last, they reached the forward hangar doors, faint blue lights spilling through the gaps. The sound of Sindar soldiers screaming echoed from the other side. Jack drew his sidearm instinctively, though. He knew it would be useless. She's in there, he whispered. Raxor placed his clawed hand on the door's manual release. Stay behind me, he said. The door slid open with a groan, revealing a scene that froze Jack's blood. The hangar was a graveyard. Sindar soldiers lay scattered like broken dolls, their weapons and armor twisted into unrecognizable shapes. Salira stood in the center, her glowing eyes locked on the remaining Sindar, an aura of energy radiating from her like a storm about to break. She raised her hand slowly, and the remaining Sindar soldiers lifted off the ground, their bodies writhing in the air as invisible pressure crushed the life from them. Jack flinched as he heard bones crack, their screams cut short as they collapsed. In a heap, Raxer stepped forward, his deep voice cutting through the silence. Salira, she turned her head toward him slowly, her expression cold. You should have stayed away, she said, her voice a chilling echo. Raxer walked toward her carefully, his massive frame casting long shadows on the hangar floor. Can't, he said softly, because I know you're still in there. Salira, the one I bonded with, the one I fought to save. Salira tilted her head slightly, as though confused. That person is gone, she said. They took her apart, piece by piece until nothing was left but this. Raxer's voice cracked as he stepped closer. Then let me put the pieces back together. He said, please, Salira, I'm begging you, come back to me. For a heartbeat, her expression softened, her glowing eyes flickering with a shadow. Of the woman she had once been, Jack felt hope spark in his chest, but it vanished as quickly as it came. You still don't understand? Salira said, her voice trembling now. They built me to destroy. I can feel it every second. The hunger to kill, the rage that never stops. If I stay awake, I will kill you too. Raxer shook his head. No, you won't, he said firmly. Because I won't let you lose yourself again, Salira's energy flared, the blue light around her intensifying until it burned Jack's eyes. You can't stop me, Raxer, she whispered, but maybe I can stop myself. She turned suddenly, her glowing eyes locking onto the Sindar vessel visible through the hangar's observation window, energy building in her hands like a star. About to explode, Jack stepped forward in alarm. Wait, no, he shouted. You'll destroy yourself. Salira didn't look back. That's the point, she said quietly. Raxer lunged forward, grabbing her arm before she could unleash her power. No, he said, his voice raw with desperation. Don't do this, Salira. Don't leave me again. Salira met his gaze, and for the first time Jack saw tears in her glowing eyes. I was already gone. Raxer, she said softly. This is the only way to save you. The hangar shook violently. As the Sindar ship fired another volley, metal screaming as the hull buckled, Jack realized the decision had to be made now. Raxer, he said, his voice urgent. You said you could eject the forward sections. Do it now. Seal her and the Sindar off before it's too late. Raxer's claws hovered over the emergency release panel, his heart tearing itself apart. As he looked at the woman he loved, and in that moment, he knew that whatever choice he made would haunt him forever. The hangar was deathly silent, except for the distant hum of failing engines and the creak of the ship's damaged hull. Jack could barely breathe as his eyes darted between Raxer and Salira. The emergency release panel blinked red beside Raxer's. Clawed hand one press would eject the entire forward section of the Valkyra. Sending Salira and the remaining Sindar soldiers into the void. Raxer, Jack said urgently, you have to decide now. She's building energy. She's going to take the whole ship with her. But Raxer wasn't looking at the panel. His glowing eyes were locked on Salira, her silver hair glowing faintly in the hangar's blue emergency lights, the energy around her flaring like a living storm. Her body trembling as she struggled to hold it in. You were always stronger than me, Raxer said softly, stepping closer to her. But not because of what they made you, Salira. Because of who you are. You are not the weapon they built. You are not their creation. You are my bonded one, my heart. And I know you can fight this. Salira's glowing eyes filled with pain. You don't understand, she said, her voice trembling. I can feel it inside me, the rage, the hunger. It's like chains around my soul. I can't break free. Raxer closed the distance between them, his massive frame casting a shadow over her smaller, trembling form. Then let me break them for you, he said, Don't push me away again, Celira. I will not lose you, not this time, Jax. Heart pounded as he watched, every instinct screaming at him to hit the emergency release himself. But something in Raxor's voice stopped him. Celira's hands trembled as the energy continued to build. Light spilling from her fingertips like streams of fire. Raxor, she whispered, if I stay, I will kill you. I can't control it, Raxor. Reached up slowly and placed his claws gently against her face. His voice steady. Then take my strength, he said. Take my control, because I believe in you. Celira and I always will. For a moment, she simply stared at him, her glowing eyes flickering, and then something shifted. The storm around her began to waver, the energy faltering as her body trembled harder. I remember, she whispered, her voice breaking. I remember the bond. I remember you. The light around her began to fade, the deadly energy dissipating as she fell forward into Raxor's arms, her strength draining away. He held her tightly, his massive arms wrapping around her fragile frame as if he could shield her from the entire universe. Jack stepped forward cautiously. Is it over? He asked, his voice uncertain, but before Raxor could answer, the deck beneath their feet shuddered violently. The Sindar vessel had locked its boarding clamps tighter. Forcing the Volcara's forward hull to buckle, sparks rained. From the ceiling, as the hull's structural integrity dropped to zero, they're going to tear us apart. Jack said, if we don't eject the forward section, we're done. Celira lifted her head weakly from Raxor's chest. Her glowing eyes soft now. No, she whispered. I can stop them, but you have to let me go. Raxor shook his head instantly. I will not, he said. You just came back to me. I can't lose you again. Celira placed her trembling hand against his chest, her touch warm. You won't lose me, she said softly, because this time, I choose. I choose to protect you, Raxor. She turned to Jack, her eyes clear and calm for the first time. When the clamps release, fire everything you have into their core. Jack's throat tightened. Celira, wait, there has to be another way. She shook her head slowly. There isn't. Before either of them could stop her, she slipped from Raxor's arms with a speed that belied her weakness. Sprinting toward the gaping breach at the far end of the hangar where the Sindar soldiers were forcing their way through, she moved like a streak of silver light, her energy building once more. No, Raxor roared, lunging after her, but she was already gone. Leaping through the breach and onto the Sindar ship's hull with a force that sent a shockwave through both vessels, boarding clamps disengaged instantly as the Sindar ship scrambled to detach. But it was too late. Celira's energy erupted in a blinding flash that consumed everything. Her voice echoed one last time through the cums. Live. The explosion tore through the void, the shockwave slamming the Volcara backward. Jack hit the deck hard as the entire ship rattled like a toy in a hurricane. The forward sections of the Sindar vessel disintegrated in the blast. Fragments of molten metal spinning into space. When the light faded, the enemy ship was gone, nothing left but debris drifting silently. The control room crackled with voices as the surviving crew reported in. Hull breaches sealed, engines stable. We're still alive, one technician said in disbelief. Raxor stood in the hangar's shattered remains, his massive frame hunched, his claws trembling as they reached toward the void where Celira had vanished. Jack approached slowly, his voice soft. She saved all of us. Raxor's glowing eyes were filled with grief, but also a strange kind of peace. She saved herself too, he said quietly. She chose her own ending, not the one they forced on her. Jack placed a hand on the alien commander's shoulder. We'll make sure her sacrifice means something. He said, the Sindar won't stop, but now we know they can be beaten. Raxor turned to him, his expression hardening with purpose. Then we will hunt them, he said, his voice filled with quiet rage. For Celira, for everyone they've destroyed. We will burn their empire to the ground. Jack nodded, the stars beyond the shattered hangar doors glinting like silent witnesses, and for the first time since this nightmare began, he felt hope stir in his chest as the Volcara limped forward into the vast darkness of space. Jack looked one last time at the place where Celira had vanished, her silver hair and glowing eyes etched forever into his memory. And he knew this was not the end, because legends like hers never truly died.